Edition of Morning Coffee with Big Al
and Special T.
We're happy to be coming to you from Cypress Street Radio, AOC Community Media's streaming broadcast.
Look for us every day of the week. Our 8 a.m. show will start your morning off right. That's right, in a good way.
Not right as in radical right. We bring you good ideas, good pastimes, and who knows what else.
Really? With progressive flair. Our 7:30, is it 7:30 or 7 o'clock? I don't know. Somewhere in the evening, between 7 and 7:30, we have our evening show. It's a great backdrop for some decaf and peace of mind. So whether you're watching in the morning or the evening, just get whatever your favorite beverage is so you can chill and watch us. And so we're starting up another one. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Yeah.
I was wearing my mask so that we could be a good example for everyone for the second wave.
Yeah.
This is a ninja mask direct from South Korea, where they know how to handle things like this, unlike the United States of America, apparently. How are you doing, Al?
Oh, I'm not unwell, thank you.
Well, that's good. That's a hallmark milestone, if ever I heard one, and one that all of us should seek to obtain. We have, I mentioned that we did get a notice that the states that sort of opened up the distancing and more travel and motion and everything on the 15th of November have experienced a spike. I got a report from the state of Texas that they had more reported infections yesterday than ever.
The 15th of
May.
Yeah. Okay.
But yesterday, more in Texas than they ever had before.
I read something about that too.
Yeah, so Louisiana, watch out.
Well, it's an infectious disease. And unless people, I think the mask helps some, but they don't
if you don't wear them.
Right. And I was reading an article yesterday from a guy, doctor that's well-versed in all the viral stuff and the contagion stuff and all that.
He's local? Is he local?
No, some...
Is he from Texas?
No, not from, like...
Did you talk to him one-on-one, or did you read something about it?
No, I read his article.
Okay.
And he was saying that, according to his best estimation or best guess or whatever you want to call it, the usual progression of something like this is to once 60 or 70% of the populace has been infected, and the COVID has done however it's going to manifest or present, with them. Some people it's not too serious, and some people it's fatal. So somewhere in that range. But once they're done with it, then they'll become one of the the percentage that he said needs to get up to 60 or 70%, and then we won't have that many more infections. It'll start taking off.
So does the 60 or 70% include all the people who died from it?
Well,
or just the people who have been infected and survived? Well,
I think it's mainly talking about getting the herd immunity. you know,
Okay.
and since we don't have a vaccine,
And won't for over a year, probably.
What's that now?
And won't for probably a year.
Right. Well, he says it'll probably take a year and a half for all this to happen before, you know, there's enough people that are already have the antibodies to deal with it. And, you know, it appears there's two strains, at least two strains, so that would account for some of the other interesting things about it. But and, you know, like I was talking to a friend of mine that's a doctor, and
oh, so you did talk to a real doctor? Well,
this is not the same one that wrote the article, but
okay.
Yes, I did talk to a real doctor, and I guess it's my supposition that since it is similar to a common cold virus, similar in some ways, you know, I don't know what the percentage of similarity is, but it makes sense to me that the body has some parts of the antibody already compounded, I guess you could say. I mean, and
during caveman days, whatever, or all in this, all from the same atom or whatever.
You know, and I'm not a doctor, and I'm, you know, don't play one on TV. Not at least I haven't recently. But you know, I think some people, you know, obviously, I mean, a person's immunity. I mean, what is the word I'm trying to think of?
They have a natural immunity that keeps them from having symptoms as strong as everybody else.
Well, yeah, that's, I think that plays a part, but it's definitely has a lot of very unusual characteristics.
Well, as I was talking to our group before we started the recording of our show, Dr. Fauci just recently indicated that this is the most complex virus that he's ever come across, more so even than the AIDS epidemic that hit so many years ago. So we've got our work cut out for us, and I think that it would be very wise for people who were identified as most susceptible to this outbreak and bad effects from it to stay in their own personal isolated space as much as possible. I heard that there is a app that many of us may be familiar with called Nextdoor that's at least statewide, probably national, but it clusters into different neighborhoods, and that people who are needing help can post that they need assistance, either getting food or whatever. And if you've got a really connected cluster of willing volunteers and people who have been toward being humane to their neighbors, that they respond, and it really does help. You know, they'll go and buy things and drop them off at the door or whatever, and do exchanges like that for those who are not so easily able to get out and about. And, you know, we do have some residents who don't even have cars in certain neighborhoods. So a network like that, I think, would be a positive thing to try and capitalize upon in this precarious situation that we're in.
Yeah, that would be, you know, it sounds like it would be helpful.
Yeah, and I think it's called Nextdoor. You can look it up online if you have a computer, and if you don't, you know, maybe you have a network that is actually person to person. I know that I still communicate with some of my neighbors. We stay the distance. We wear our masks. Sometimes we talk on the phone and watch each other from across the street. You know, that's pretty safe. Only thing is that this particular neighbor I do this with is in pretty much the same situation I am, except she's got family that lives around her. So that's, I guess, a plus. So she can probably get her daughter to go and get things for her. But anyway, you just make the most of what you have. You know, the whole country, the whole nation seems to be having so many multitudes of issues that are coming to the forefront. I mean, this may be the first, and I don't know if the pandemic has anything to do with it. Probably not, but the American psyche has been rattled with this horrible abuse of power by the police against a man who was actually a leader within his community, helping youth to go down the right path. And I guess it was something about a counterfeit $20 bill, and he lost his life. Probably didn't even know it was, you know? I mean, I wouldn't know whether I had a counterfeit bill or not, and what would people do if I did, you know? Would they just instantaneously call the police? I don't know. There is a certain police officer, if he found out I had one, I'm sure he'd throw me under the jail.
Yeah.
He might even step on my neck.
Well, you know, to me, it gets back to the public servant thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And having been a public servant for 20 plus years,
Are you still a public servant?
No, not really. I mean, since I retired, I guess technically I'm not anymore, but
okay. This is a public service?
Well, yeah, I guess it is, but I mean, you know, like
somewhat
officially a public servant working for the government, you know, that sort of thing. Because, I mean, and that applies to a police officer,
fireman,
garbage man, senator, congressman, everybody up to the president.
All the politicians who are supposed to be representing us. Right.
And it's not, you know, I guess some of them think they're kings or, you know, little princes or
demigods.
Something like that. Right. But you know, if they got back into the thought pattern of being a public servant, which is what they are, then things would be a lot better.
Yeah, I think you're right, Al.
Well, you know,
actually,
it makes sense to me.
You are correct. I mean, I'm wondering about those Wright people, like the Wright brothers, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, oddly enough, that was my first last name.
Really?
Yeah, I'll tell you about that sometime, but...
you must have been adopted.
Well, as a matter of fact, that's the fact.
Okay.
And, but you know, that's not the story we're on here about. Yeah, but it is.
I can add to that too. My name is actually, my married name is an adopted name also.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. My husband's father was adopted after he married.
That's interesting.
He wasn't adopted by his wife. He was adopted by his stepfather. Yeah. So anyway, that is really kind of unusual. But anyway, adoption can be good.
It's I think in my case, it may have been good. I mean, it's hard to say. Maybe not too good for my adoptive parents. Maybe they
regretted that. They regretted that move, huh?
Yeah, maybe they got a little bit more than they bargained for. Who knows? But it's a good.
Either.
I think generally speaking, it's a good thing.
Okay, good. Better than foster care.
Yeah, probably so. That's I'd say that's likely. I mean, oddly enough, I really haven't looked into it that much. I mean, it was, I didn't even know it was something different for the longest time, even though I was told, that I was adopted. I mean, to me, it was like, okay, well, what else is new? And when we went to adopt my sister, it was just like, I guess this is what everybody does. I mean, well, really, I mean, it was just like, looking back on it, it's kind of funny, but,
you don't know that it's really different until it hits you in the face and you're
right. I mean,
peers and all of them are like, okay, well, that's strange,
Yeah. I guess some of the, getting back to the public servant thing, our state legislature here I was just reading about this today, about them making appointments and such behind, in closed sessions, behind closed doors.
I think that is a party issue. I think I have heard that they did this without including the opposing party, where the other party was not even invited to the table in any way, and that seems to be more or less a pattern now in today's political environment. I mean, look at the committee that actually was bipartisan in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania, the state legislator there. One of their committees, the members who were Republicans all got together, knew that somebody had been exposed to the coronavirus, talked about it and didn't tell anybody, and met without masks with the Democratic Party.
I read that too.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just irresponsible.
Well, I think it's blatantly an assault on public health.
I mean, they
knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing, and they knew that it could bring harm to those people who they exposed, and they went out of their way, it sounded like, to come in really close contact with them. Some of them.
Well, that's I don't know.
It's unfortunate, for sure. I hope our legislators aren't that vindictive.
Yeah, vindictive was the word that came to mind. But that's kind of pitiful.
It's very unfortunate and just beyond comprehension in my mind.
Well, I mean, it's just like, I mean, I know it's much greater magnitude of, generating distrust and all that, but it's like, it's hard for me to think of very many.
What? Is it time to go home?
No, that's my dive alarm. So I guess I'll have to mute my phone.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, we're seeing all sorts of instances of disregard for human life. I mean, even in Washington, D.C., I don't know, there's a really good expose that was done by the Washington Post that actually takes all the different areas and players and sets them up on where it's like in time for when the different things happened. And inside too, where there's overlays of communications on the police channel of when certain orders went out, and also photographs that are with cameras that have the resolution high enough, even with telescopic lenses, to see what different pieces of equipment, ammunition, etc., were being used by the police forces.
I hadn't seen that.
Well, we're going to see it before too very long. We're going to actually share it with our listening audience, and you will hear the video if you're listening on just audio, but eventually you'll be able to see the video too, and it is very revealing. So I think it's worth the time and attention that it needs to get.
Well, that sounds good.
Yeah, there's all sorts of things happening. There were actually audio feeds where they played music that was composed and performed by George Floyd.
Oh, yeah?
The man who lost his life. And I'm hoping that the nation as a whole doesn't let this go unattended and without some real substantial action, policy. Personally, I think reparations are in order. I mean, we've denigrated the people who were brought over here against their will for how many years? 400? In different ways. Not all of them have suffered as much as others, but the general bias against the Black race, interestingly, faults them with a culture that was forced upon them by the people who brought them over and continued to exploit, compromise their opportunities for education, and systematically kept them from achieving a better life for themselves. I don't know, have you ever heard anything about Black Wall Street in Arkansas? Was it Arkansas?
Oklahoma, Tulsa.
Tulsa, Oklahoma, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's I heard about that a while back, a few years back, but it's I don't know.
It's just jealousy. And you know what I think some of it is? I think that some of it is that because they've mistreated others for so long, they're afraid it's going to turn around and come back and reverse.
Well, yeah. There's a lot of people that are afraid of that. I mean, but there's also a mechanism. I mean, and you see it everywhere. I mean, it's just a part of conditioning people to think that it's okay to do something bad to somebody else, because what you do is you say, well, this person is subhuman, or this person is, whatever. I mean, it's like the, with the Gulf War, the first Gulf War.
It was
they're taking the incubators and throwing the babies on the floor and all this, which is total BS. Okay,
it was just made up. But
exactly.
That happened that happened in Germany too.
Exactly.
If you can stomach watching and sitting through Schindler's List, you see that there were certain people, not everybody, obviously, but there are certain people who didn't even think that the Jews were human, didn't treat them human. And if they went and crossed a certain line, they felt like they, infected themselves in some way.
Well, I mean, to boil it down to the basics, you have, within our midst, we have psychopaths, sociopaths, and antisocial personality disorder type people. But what that boils down to is you have a small group of people, a small percentage, like 5% or less, I'd say, and they have bad ideas, but people go along with it. It's just
they're just like, not willing to step out and say this is wrong.
Well, either that, or it's like with the force, weak minds are easily influenced by they're using the dark side.
The strategy, the game plan for Hitler was to not embrace the academic community or the scientists, to go for those people who were less educated because they were more easily influenced. And they said the idea was that they would idolize anything that you said and follow like you were, the person who was going to make everything better for them. Well, so much for that.
Yeah, I think that probably didn't work out as planned. But there are, it's an effective strategy.
We can see it here.
Yeah, it seemed like somebody, who was it that said they don't like they love the uneducated, I think is.
It was Hitler for one. He said it in German though.
Yeah, well, this was in English, as I recall.
Oh, okay.
Much more recently.
Wow.
In a speech.
I don't know. I can't be sure of who might have done that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's
somebody well known.
Yeah, pretty well known. Yeah.
Yeah. Sad, but probably true.
It's on tape.
Yeah.
On video.
So anyway, I think that speaking of videos and stuff, it might be time to show everybody the timeline of what happened in Washington, D.C. during their protest and photo op for the day.
Fired at, gassed, and shoved. On June 1st, President Trump threatened military action to quell unrest that has spread since the killing of George Floyd, a black man in police custody.
I am your president of law and order and an ally of all peaceful protesters.
As he spoke, a remarkable scene unfolded outside the White House. Police in riot gear fired gas canisters and used grenades containing rubber pellets to scatter largely peaceful demonstrators. Their actions cleared the way for the president to cross Lafayette Square Park and walk to the historic St. John's Church for a photo op. The Washington Post analyzed hours of video footage from protest participants and media and obtained audio and transcripts of police communications and other records to assemble the most complete account to date of the crackdown, including the roles of the agencies involved and the tactics and weaponry they used. At 5 p.m., 2 hours before a citywide curfew, protesters gathered along H Street Northwest between 15th and 17th Streets, on the edge of Lafayette Square. The park sits directly north of the White House. Because of the protests, it is closed to the public. About an hour later, law enforcement and military forces begin massing in large numbers. One group that includes Secret Service assembles behind a barricade on the northern perimeter of the park. Another group forms a line in the middle of the park, close to a command center run by the United States Park Police. This group includes members of the D.C. National Guard, who can be identified by their camouflage uniforms and the insignia on their shoulders. Park police officers are also present. At 6:08 p.m., protesters near H and 16th Streets spot Attorney General William Barr near the command center. General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, is seen behind the barricade several minutes later. Protesters erupt in cheers when some security forces appear to take a knee. It quickly becomes clear that soldiers are kneeling only to pull on gas masks. On a DC police radio channel, officers are told that CS gas, a form of tear gas, may soon be deployed. At 6:18, Secret Service members advance onto H Street. They briefly push into the public street, but pull back. Some protesters throw eggs, candy bars, and water bottles. The footage reviewed by the Post did not show protesters throwing bricks or caustic liquids, as authorities have alleged. A radio transmission 3 minutes later captures law enforcement officials checking on the status of grenadiers, a term for law enforcement personnel armed with launchers that fire chemical canisters or other projectiles used for crowd control.
John, can you just confirm when you have all the grenadiers and shields with you?
At 6:22, Barr and Milley leave Lafayette Square. A voice on a loudspeaker briefly cuts through the noise. The announcement appears to come from the southeast part of the park. Even on the front lines of the protest, in footage reviewed by the Post, the words are drowned out. Protesters turn to one another in confusion. 4 minutes later, a DC police official tells officers that some type of police action is about to take place. He instructs DC police to hold their positions on 16th Street. At 6:28, an alert comes through on a different police radio channel being used by officers from Arlington County, Virginia, who are taking directions from Park Police.
Command to talk. Level 1's been activated.
Copy. Level 1 activated 1828.
Level 1 refers to a policing tactic aimed at quelling violent unrest with as little force as possible. It involves dispersing crowds by moving rapidly toward them, avoiding physical contact. At that moment, along the northern edge of Lafayette Square, National Guard and other law enforcement forces move north toward the barricade. At least one protester throws water bottles. Another yells at the crowd to remain peaceful. The Secret Service and Park Police begin to push a group of protesters up Vermont Avenue. Park Police officers on horses appear from the northeast corner of Lafayette Square. Members of the Bureau of Prison Special Operations Response Team, identified by their patches, are soon seen arriving at the barricades. The unit is trained to put down riots and resolves hostage situations in federal prisons. They are rarely deployed in public. They are amongst several groups armed with pepperball guns and canister launchers. The canister launcher seen here can fire a projectile that breaks on impact, expelling irritant powder. If fired directly at a person, the canister can cause serious injury or even death. The pepperball gun seen here fires small balls of a chemical irritant derived from hot peppers. A metal canister is seen here on the vest of law enforcement. The orange markings on the canister match those of tear-inducing chemical grenades. At 6:32, officers receive the orders to push back the largest group of protesters, the group on H Street. They advance on the crowd. The protesters retreat. The police line stops next to St. John's Church. A Park Police sergeant, identified by his white helmet, warns a protester.
Now! Better back up! I need down! You're I'm going down!
At 6:35 on H Street, Park Police officers rush again toward the protesters. Other officers quickly follow. A chemical grenade is rolled. It is unclear by whom. A large explosion is heard. CNN cameras filming the scene from above show the crowd turning and running. A park police officer strikes an Australian cameraman with a shield and grabs his camera. Another officer is seen swinging a baton at reporters' back as she and the cameraman flee. Park police push a group of protesters west on H Street.
Keep moving. Head down. Keep moving. Keep moving.
A protester films pepper balls fired toward the crowd. They can be heard striking the ground.
Keep moving. Keep moving. They got pepper balls. Keep moving.
A member of the Park Police SWAT team throws a sting ball grenade into the crowd. The devices are designed to explode, firing rubber balls in a radius of up to 50 feet. Several Park Police SWAT team members and a member of the Bureau of Prisons Tactical Team are seen firing pepper balls into the fleeing crowd.
Stop shooting them! Why are you shooting us? Why?
In a matter of minutes, the skirmish line surges past St. John's Church. Police pause a few feet beyond the intersection. On camera, a Park Police officer wearing a yellow helmet is seen gesturing at officers to hold the line at 16th and H Street Northwest. A minute later, on 16th Street, a Park Police SWAT team officer crouches down to roll a chemical grenade toward the protesters.
Another tear gas bomb right at our feet. We're going to move back from this right now.
Arlington units, we are going all the way to I Street. Copy I Street.
A line of at least 12 mounted Park Police officers are deployed to disperse the crowd. At 6:44, the president begins to speak in the Rose Garden. He's minutes away from leaving the White House to go to the church.
My fellow Americans, my first and highest duty as president is to defend our great country and the American people.
Outside, officers detain protesters. Officers push protesters more than a block west along H Street to 17th Street, where the protesters are forced south. Yellow smoke rises from 2 chemical grenades thrown onto the street. Although police and White House officials have denied that it was used, a WUSA 9 television reporter at the intersection recovered a spent canister labeled CS, a substance commonly known as tear gas. He later posted a photograph of it on social media. CNN airs a shot directly above St. John's Church, showing the square, which had been packed with protesters at the start of the hour. It is empty, except for law enforcement officials. At 7:02, President Trump walks out of the White House, accompanied by Barr, Milley, and Mark Esper, the Secretary of Defense. They begin the walk across Lafayette Square for the 3-minute photo op.
Is that your Bible? Your Bible?
Well, not the America I grew up in. Of course, there was Penn State.
Yeah.
Another peaceful protest that ended in a bad way.
Dead in Ohio.
Yes.
Yeah, the something about what is it? The right of the people to assemble peacefully and address their grievances. You know, that seems like I've read that somewhere. But oh yeah, it's in the Bill of Rights. But I don't think this was a real good video, supporting, as far as, I don't think it made the protesters look bad, which of course, you always, that's kind of a strategy, is to discredit your opponent. And in this case, the opponent seems to be the American people.
Yeah.
That, don't like what's going on here. And I can't say that I really blame them. Oh, we didn't use tear gas. Oh, yeah. Okay, well, sure looks like a tear gas canister to me. It's kind of like.
There's just too many lies.
Well, the propaganda that we have to deal with every day, it's an onslaught. It's just, it's not really that surprising that some people believe what they believe, because they're constantly bombarded with,
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to show this on Fox News or,
Probably not.
Right. Invested outlets for reporting news.
Well, what was the, I heard the guy's name, but it slipped my mind now. The general or whatever, the military guy that was,
who actually came out against having the armed forces, the national military responding in the streets of the nation.
Well, I should have written his name down because I wanted to mention this, but I think it was today. He said he was sorry he participated in this at all. And he probably.
Well, after you see what happened, you saw the part about the park police believing that they were clearing for construction was when they were sent out there, and then that ended up being
really?
In the subtitles that they were told that they were going to be clearing the streets for a construction.
I missed that, but but see that once again. That's the propaganda thing. It's a slightly different angle, but you get people thinking they're doing something for an acceptable reason, and then they start doing it, and then they find out what they're really doing it for. It's otherwise they probably wouldn't have done it in the first place. Well, I don't know. Some people.
Those ones who were from the prison area, to see that one guy after the instructions are to just hold things where they are, to lob a grenade kind of thing into the crowd still. You can see his face plainly. I'm hoping that there's some kickback on that, but maybe not. Maybe, you don't know. They talk about the culture and how it needs to change, but that, everything's okay and everybody's protected, and they, have like a code of silence. And, that happened, that would have happened with Abu Ghraib if nobody had said anything about what was going on in that prison that was overseas. Just horrific cases of abuse, and just disgusting,
Yeah.
I just can't imagine. It should become so base as to accept something like that as okay.
Yeah.
But, I'm sure that every one of us may think back, or maybe not. We may have heroes within our midst at very young ages, but I know I was caught off guard in a situation where somebody truly was doing something wrong, and I was young. It was like 15, and I didn't say anything about it. And there was another person with me, and they didn't say anything about it. And it still stays in our minds as to what happened. It was just odd. This guy who did what he did ended up being kicked out of Florida State for violence. He had gone there on a athletic scholarship, and it ended up being in the news that he and his whole family were part of the Ku Klux Klan.
Well, that's
not my favorite date.
Yeah. Well, it's a strange times, or interesting times, as the Chinese curse says. But I don't know, you were mentioning something about reparations earlier,
Yes.
Huh?
Yes, there may be a lot of pushback on that.
Well, maybe, but but that, I mean, if you go back, and I was just discussing this last night.
How about that?
Yeah, a small, once again, getting back to my little premise earlier about a small percentage of people with a bad idea, but a lot of people follow them. A lot of people go along with it. And but you take the acquisition of this landmass, the establishment of the United States of America, and as far as reparations, I mean, probably one would have to think that the Native Americans probably didn't get a real good deal on the.
Absolutely not.
I mean,
they didn't even abide by the treaties that were written.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, I don't think it's such a bad idea to try to make amends to people that you've wronged. I mean, maybe I didn't do anything. Maybe I didn't oppress any particular group of people. But, the
collective group of nationalist Americans are guilty.
Well, I don't know. It's
at least the southern ones. Sorry, guys, but it's true.
Well, I don't know. You have. It's a very interesting topic, and and I guess I look at what I would like to see is the paradise that we could have here on this planet right now if people would quit doing stupid stuff, which maybe that's a bridge too far or something. But I have
a simple idea. I have a simple idea to take all the houses that are too very small to go in and break walls out and make them the size that are supposed to support the people that are in them.
Okay.
I mean, that's pretty basic.
Okay, I'm not sure if I'm getting the details here. I mean, I kind of got the idea.
There aren't any details. It's just consideration of the fact that, that there are areas that have such crowding that you can't actually be in a normal situation even within your own home.
Okay. I don't guess I hadn't really run across that, I don't think. I mean, I'm in a fairly good sized room here. It's not huge, but it's not, I have been in some smaller places. Of course, then you have
you look at the size of the families that are in there, it might not be.
Well, I mean, the whole system. I mean, the system we have that puts profit at the top of the list it's going to create problems. I'll put it like that without going into, great detail. But
so there are advantages to socialism that we have relied on since at least the turn of the century, between the 1800s and the 1900s. Sorry, guys, but it's true.
Well,
So,
you look at who actually gets, what would be considered social, or, what technically would be defined as socialistic benefits.
and so with that, we're probably going to end up leaving that for our listening audience to think about and see if you can realize that, like, airplane travel, the breakup of huge monopolies, the government coming in and banning sweatshops. I mean, we did a lot of good utilizing the full capacity of government. And so I think our music is going to start shortly.
Well, I'm not sure if it's till the music or if that's what we're looking at, or if we have to include the music or in that.
Do we? Let's get a signal. We don't know. Something.
Well, I mean, I guess. Well, if the music is going to start in about 5 minutes, I'm cool with that. I mean, that would be. Okay. Well, I mean, we probably need to start the music pretty quick. And for all our fans out there, now you're getting a little insight on our production.
That's right. And our music lasts about 7 minutes.
Yes, it does.
We're talking to our director.
Yeah. Director, producer, and gaffer, and best boy, and all that stuff.
All right.
Well, you wanted to go ahead and leave it at that, huh, Teresa? And just.
I think so. I think people should, look into socialism in the United States and see all the good that it's done.
Yeah, even though once again, getting back to the propaganda, everybody, socialism bad, that's been, pushed for a long, right at the start or the end of World War II, oddly enough. But look into it a little bit, and I guess we can, as far as the music goes, we can roll it.
Peace, love, and all that good stuff.